G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Kirsty Dunphey from Up Loans based in beautiful Launceston, Tasmania. Thanks for your time today, Kirsty.
Pleasure. It's lovely to be up here in the real capital of Tasmania.
Oh, don't start the north-south divide argument. Let's start with how we know each other. So Emma Vincor put us in touch. We've got a lot of mutual friends up north, but we've never actually met until a few weeks ago at the Launceston Grow a Small Business meetup. And thank you for coming along to that.
Thank you for organising any meetup where people talk about fantastic businesses and there's gin. So it's like two of my favourite things.
Exactly. Yeah. So good to finally meet you.
And you.
So tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So we are a team of 3 mortgage brokers in Launceston. We've been up and running now for 6 years. We've got most of our staff based in Lonnie with us. We've got a couple of staff in the Philippines, a couple of staff that work remotely, but most of us are based in Lonnie, and it's sort of an all-female office of mortgage brokers. And yeah, that's primarily what we do. We do a lot of residential loans, some commercial loans through my colleague who is a commercial broker, but primarily we write a lot of residential loans. It's Tassie, so loan sizes are obviously very small. We do write loans all across the country, but primarily Tassie is our real footprint. And so lots and lots of little loans is what we do.
And you must be very busy at the moment. I mean, Tasmania's been on the upward trend for the last 5 years. I think I read something the other day. Tasmania median house price has gone up 52% in 5 years. The nearest capital to that was Canberra over the last 5 years, went up 30%. So Tassie's been booming. Then obviously COVID hit. Everyone thought property would drop 20%. Tasmania's gone up something like 10 or 12% in the last 12 months. And they're now projecting another 20% increase across Australia in the next 2 years because of the low interest loans and government stimulus, the home builder grants, and the all the things they're doing to help first home buyers get on the ladder.
Yeah, it's been a very, very weird 12 months. Like we did definitely anticipate when COVID struck that prices would stagnate. But what happened was, understandably so many people who would have been going to list their properties for sale decided not to. So there was a massive shortage of properties. I had maybe a 2-week period where valuations were a bit unstable. I had one client who was able to negotiate $20,000 off the price of their home because they lost their job and then got it back as soon as JobKeeper came in. But fundamentally, there's been no let off. And you're right, it's been 5 years. So I remember it was sort of September 2016. And I just said to everyone, it's turning right now. Like I could feel it. I was a real estate agent when the last boom in Tassie happened in 2003. And that was even more stark. Like I remember prices on standard family homes doubled within an 18-month period at that stage. So it was short and sharp, whereas this has been really sustained and it's been driven by a lot of external factors. So it's not a usual market boom down here. So it's very unusual. I mean, it won't continue on for forever, but we definitely have to get in and make sure that we're all productive and busy while it is happening. Yeah.
And Tasmania is riding yet another wave because of the boom in regional people moving to the regions out of the big cities now with COVID. Businesses and are a lot more open to people working from home or remotely. So regional Tasmania median price has gone up even higher than the capital cities in the last 12 months. So I think Tassie is going to see a bit more of that in the next few years as well.
Definitely. And I mean, as you would know, Tassie has this influx of people that go away, they move to the big smoke, they make their path, and then they come home typically, when it's child rearing time. So many of them are coming home earlier now because of everything that's happened. I mean, one of the clients I was speaking to this morning, typical COVID refugee, had been living overseas, came straight back home, is now buying here because she's here. So there's so much of that, like our returning people that would have maybe sprinkled home over the next 10 years have all come home in a blast of glory as well. So yeah, it's furious times at the moment.
Yeah, I've had 3 friends from Sydney sell their homes and move to Tasmania because of COVID. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. We're getting more people as well from Melbourne,
Yeah.
because obviously Melbourne had such a hard time last year that for some of them it's just been like, stuff it. We're not going to be in a big city in an apartment if we have to go through lockdown again and again. And so we just want the big spaces. I mean, we were so lucky with lockdown here, block sizes are bigger. You could still get out and about. It was obviously so much shorter. So yeah, there's people coming from all over the place, which is quite devastating for a lot of Tasmanians.
Yeah, the secret's out now, unfortunately. I should stop boasting about Tasmania on these casts, actually. We get people from overseas wanting to move here as well.
Exactly.
So tell our audience how you started out.
So I have been a bit of a serial entrepreneur from a very, very young age. I think it's my parents' fault. Like, I watched them have all sorts of different small businesses from a very young age. And I had the bug early. I would watch them do their legitimate businesses. My brain was a bit sort of like crooked to start off with as far as what a business meant. Like, my first proper business venture was me inviting everyone in my grade 1 class and then everyone in all the other grade 1 classes to come to a birthday party for me, and bring along presents and all sorts of things. But I hadn't actually told my mum, and it wasn't my birthday. I got an unusual start. I definitely thought that was a brilliant business plan though. But then I would always be selling things or working in my parents' small businesses, and until I started my first proper legitimate business at the age of 15. Had a few different attempts at doing things till I started my own real estate agency at 21.
Mm-hmm.
And spent sort of 20 years in that industry, did most of the things that you could do in real estate. Was really fortunate. I had so many of my former staff members go on to own their own real estate agencies. I think at last count it was something like 15 of my team then went on to own their own agency. So that was probably my most favorite thing about working in real estate. And then about 6 years ago, in a moment of genius, I thought, I'm going to become a mortgage broker because I've been in real estate for 20 years and that'll be a piece of pie, and was completely wrong. Like,
right.
super complicated industry, very, very complex. I was on the steepest learning curve for about 4 years. Thankfully, that steep learning curve, it's still there, but it's not the same. Now I've really hit my stride with it. But I love this industry. Like, it's the same sort of impact that I was able to have in real estate, but it's so much deeper. For someone to sit down and share their wallet with you, their bank accounts, everything, within a first meeting, and to be able to help them shape their future financially. It's a pretty fun job. It's a pretty stressful job, but we love it. Yeah.
And good timing too. If you started 6 years ago and it was 5 years ago that this most recent boom in Tasmania started, that's great timing.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, when you start off as a mortgage broker, you do a lot of refinances. So we were already cutting our teeth before the market started with that, just helping people secure better interest rates. But then, yeah, absolutely. The market started booming down here. I was pretty fortunate. My first real estate agency opened a little bit before the last boom, and then my first mortgage broking company. Yeah. So let's just say, that's brilliant timing, not good luck, but
yes. Well, 2 out of 2. That's great.
Exactly.
And 2015, when you started Uploans, how old were you then?
Oh, see, I should read the questions. Then I'd know the answer to that.
Yeah.
So what am I? I'm 42 now. And so I was
36.
Yeah, about 36. Yeah.
Right. And do you have any key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business?
Well, the two of us started Uploans at that stage. So myself and my business partner, she promptly got pregnant nearly immediately after we started our business, which has happened to me a number of times with business partners. I seem to pick women right at the prime of their childbearing years. And so it went from 2 of us to 1 of us. So we went down pretty quickly. Yep. But we've gone from just the 2 of us operating with no physical sort of premises. We used to operate from cafes. We would meet people wherever we could, basically. Then we went to a small office. We had a couple of team members. Now I think we've got 12 in our Launceston office, and then we've got a further 4 that we have external to our office that work with us. So,
as in offshore?
Members. Yeah, we have 2 offshore and then 2 other sort of equivalents throughout Australia. So one up in sunny Queensland, always making us feel jealous that she's got warmer up there than us.
So I haven't had enough coffee today. I can't add all that up. So what would the FTE be then?
16.
16 full-time equivalents. That's great. From 2 down to 1 up to 16 in 6 years. That's phenomenal growth. Well done.
But in fairness, I mean, that's probably the most challenging part of running the business. So I've never been client facing in a business before like I am now. I was always in charge of procedures and the team and strategy. But now, because I'm so client facing, making sure that we actually do have that handle on running the team and making sure that the culture is right. I mean, I would say that's probably the biggest challenge in our business that we need to focus on at the moment, because with the volumes we do, we're not some of my friends who are mortgage brokers in other countries, they write fewer loans, much bigger dollar values. For us here in Tassie, we have to write a lot of loans. Like the average mortgage broker, I think I read a stat, would write anywhere between sort of 4 and 12 home loans a month. A bad month for me is 60. So if I'm not like, so if I don't have a team to support me, I can't do that. And so we've got to make sure that, that piece is right as well. So that's my big focus for this year. It's not to be completely client facing and, myopic in that sort of vision, and make sure that I'm looking after them as well.
Yep. And when was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
I'm terrible at celebrating milestones. I mean, I've been really lucky over the years. I've won a lot of business awards and had like a bit of media recognition and, done well by lots of people's accounts. But I'm also, and I think lots of entrepreneurs are like this, I never sit back and go, woohoo, now I've done it. Now I've made it. It's just kind of like, okay, great. I mean, just like 2 days ago, I added up my tally for just my personal settlements for the year so far. And there's this sort of mythical figure in broker land where you want to settle 100 million in a year. And I've never reached it before, but because of how strongly our business has grown, I've reached it already this year with 4 months still to go. But instead of celebrating that, I'm like, cool, that means I'm on track for 150 this year. And if I hit 150, I'll be like, yeah, that's great, but that's not 200. And, so I don't know, I'm pretty terrible at feeling like that. And I feel like that's just something that's built inside me. I'm not someone who says this is all I want to achieve and then I'll be done or happy. It's like, cool, what could I challenge myself to do next?
And what does success look like to you?
There's a quote that I always bring up in my mind whenever someone asks me about success, and it says, success is getting what you want, but happiness is wanting what you get. So for me, I've got to remember the stuff that makes me happy as well, because if you'd asked me a year ago what were the 3 big things in my life, it would be work, it would be my kids, I'm a single mum to 2 beautiful little girls, and travel. And so having so few things in my life, when one of them gets ripped away from you, like travel has been in the last year, like usually I'd travel 3 to 4 months of the year. So I know there was an entire year there where I didn't get on a plane. So I mean, really, it's about trying to figure out the stuff that makes me happy, and work makes me happy and my kids make me happy, but I probably need something to fill that travel void so that I'm not, a completely 2-dimensional person.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Ooh, I might not be the best person to ask for that, because we have a very minimal marketing strategy. We have a pretty strong social media presence. I always tell every single one of my staff members, and this has been the same way through all of my businesses, I don't want to come across as professional or stuffy, or I don't want to come across like a banker. If you have a conversation with me, I'm very rarely going to use jargon with you. I'm just going to talk to you like a normal human being. And I would want a 15-year-old to be able to sit in with a meeting with me and understand everything I was talking about. So always we err on the side of friendly rather than professional. And we have a super simple strategy that just basically says, if I look after you and I treat you like family and like I would want a family member of mine to be treated, we live in a small community, you'll talk, you'll tell your friends, and you'll refer people to us. So
I was going to ask that. Is that a big source of new customers for you, is referrals?
Huge. I would say 80% are repeat and referral, and then 20% comes from Google reviews, Facebook. Even sometimes you think that someone's coming quite organically, and then, I chatted with a guy just before you today and I was like, oh, thanks so much. I see that you saw us on Google, and he's like, I did, but also this person and this person and this person that I work with, you've got such a good reputation. And we don't take that for granted. I mean, you would know, working in a small town, people talk good or bad. Sometimes they'll talk bad more than they will good. So it's really important to make sure that every interaction is good. And unfortunately, we're not pizza salespeople. We can't make everyone happy. Sometimes we have to tell people that we can't help them. Sometimes we have to tell people that even if we can help them, we don't think it's in their best interest, so we won't help them. But we've still got to do it in a way that means that the person understands where we're coming from, and would still be happy to, say to someone, look, they were really honest, they were straightforward with us, they kept us informed the whole way through. Yeah, I'd like to sell pizza one day, because surely that'd be a happy job.
Yes, indeed. And I think the ratio is 10 to 1. People speak about negative things 10 times more than they will a positive thing, unfortunately, but it's human nature.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how did you fund the business?
I've never borrowed to fund any business I've ever had. I mean, it's the beauty of having predominantly service-based businesses. So we didn't have an office, and I just sold my real estate agency. So we didn't have a need for any funding. We've never borrowed anything for this business, and I couldn't imagine. Oh, well, we bought our office building last year, so I borrowed a little bit for that, but thankfully I knew a good mortgage broker. And so that's the only thing we've ever borrowed for in the business, just the building that we operate from.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
If I were to start up, like if I could go back to when I started in this industry, I would not recommend anyone do it the way that we did it. I have always had ridiculously high and undeserving levels of confidence. And so I really just thought we'd come into it, I'm smart, I'd figure it out, we'd smash it. But I would have had such an accelerated growth sort of plan if I'd been able to work at the feet of another broker who was doing high volumes and doing it well.
Yep.
There's mentoring within our industry. You can't start without it, but I basically broke my first mentor. He expected to review my first 12 deals in 6 months, and I had them all ready to go within the first couple of weeks. I was like, here, do this. And he didn't mentor any more people after me, I don't think. So it's hard work. So yeah, I mean, I needed to go and probably work for, one of the top brokers in the country, work for them for a year, learn the craft, and then go out on my own. But I probably couldn't have been told that at the time. But yeah, none of that has anything to do with funding. It has to do with the learning curve that we went on the first couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, I mean, probably just for us, I mean, I reread business books all the time, and I'm forcing myself to reread for about the 100th time at the moment, the E-Myth Revisited, because right now I've got a pretty stellar job, but I don't have a business. My business wouldn't function without me. So I've got to, move from that sort of technician stage back into being a business owner. And so that is still the most stressful stage. Like, all of our brokers are time poor. We work until midnight, 1 a.m. helping clients. I just had my first couple of days off email ever by choice last week. In 6 years, to not even, I've checked emails Christmas Day. I've replied to things like, the time poor sort of element of it. I've never worked in a business like this that can sort of suck the time out of everything, just because every deal is so intricate. And because we've had a royal commission, the amount of detail that the banks require is just insane. And for every single person you're dealing with, it's huge. Like, it's not a small deal for anyone that we're dealing with, from a first home buyer to an investor buying their 10th property. Everything's important. So just that, I guess that pull on the lives of the brokers that work within our business, their time, that's been really, really stressful. And it's not a problem I've got sorted out yet, unfortunately.
And what area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Staff management, absolutely. So I sort of alluded to it at the beginning, that I think in every business that I've had, and because I started managing staff really, really young, you would think I would be better at it by now, but the same issues keep cropping up for me. So I'm a person that gets through a lot of workload really, really fast. I love a list to work from, and I still haven't exactly grasped that not everybody else works that way. So I have a tendency towards micromanagement. I have a tendency towards like burning people out. Hopefully I'm better than I used to be with it, but I have super high expectations of everyone. And, I've still got a lot to learn there. Like anyone managing staff, I mean, it would be great if we could all just have robots. That was my favorite thing about the presentation that I saw that you guys put on. I was like, a robot? That sounds amazing. But
that was when Yeah, Martin was talking about when they bought the robot for the pharmacy, and I didn't know where he was going with this, but yeah, that was genius. It
It's
was,
fantastic. I sat in that presentation and I was like, oh my God, we don't need a robot, but we could do this, this, and this differently with our business. That's why I love listening to podcasts like this or going to presentations like that. I came out of there with my own robot to go and implement in our business.
good.
But I say all the time, it'd be great if all staff could be robots, but they're not. And that's the genius of them as well. They're, unique creatures with funny, beautiful, quirky personalities. And we have, not by choice, but we have an entirely female office in Launceston, and not a single one the same as me, not even close. We've done personality profiling. Nobody's anywhere at all like me on the spectrum.
Yep.
But they're amazing. I just need to make sure that I'm serving them best as sort of the leader of the team as well, which is hard when you have this focus on business and revenue and profitability. You got to remember the people side of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've struggled with that. Everything you just described then, high expectations drive people pretty hard. And it's something I still continually work on when I want to work with a team, when I'm working in a business. It's not natural to me, so I have to work on it.
Yeah.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I mean, probably just comes back to the sleepless nights. I mean, there was a time I remember, so I separated from my husband during the time we've had this business. But I remember one weekend, it got to Friday, pretty similar to like what we're talking about right now. And I just looked at him and I was like, you have to take my children away for the weekend. I've got 5 loans to process. And so there was this growth period where I was still doing everything within the business. I didn't have anyone processing my loans or assisting me or whatever. And I was just like, if you don't leave, I'm going to explode. I need the entire weekend to do this work. So it was kind of like some of that early joy from the success, to have 5 loans in one day to get ready should have been this amazing moment, but instead it was just stressful.
Yep.
So again, I could have learned how to handle that better had I gone into the industry in a different way, but I probably couldn't have been told at the time. I'm one of those people that sometimes has to learn by mistake.
Yep.
That smile says that you recognize that in yourself as well. Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the last question, which is what you tell yourself on day one, but of course you're going to ignore it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be like, what do you know? I'm fantastic. I mean, I remember I sat down so after I broke my first mentor, I had to get another mentor because you can't be a mortgage broker without a mentor. So I went and found an amazing broker down in Hobart. And I said, you're awesome. Will you be my mentor? And then I started just like rapid fire asking her questions. One of them was, what would you tell yourself on day one if you could go back? I've asked every successful broker I've ever met that question, trying to streamline and speed up my own growth. But she said she would tell herself that it's going to take her 4 years before she really understood the job well. And of course, I asked the question and then I just rolled my eyes in my head and I was like, she doesn't understand. I'm really smart. I'll figure it out much quicker. And then it was 4 years, if not longer. So, and every day, I'll sit in front of clients right through until 9:30 at night. They'll pop up on my Zoom or face to face. Every single one has a different situation, a different intricacy. That's fun, but also, very challenging at times.
And what do you love most about growing a small business?
I've always loved it. I just think it's in your blood. Like, I'm so grateful to my parents for indoctrinating me in that lifestyle from a really young age. I mean, and it wasn't without its pitfalls. My parents were repeat serial entrepreneurs who went bankrupt when I was in my mid-teens. And so I saw everything that worked for them and everything that failed for them. And I still wanted to go into it myself. But I love flexibility. This morning I started my day. I'm not much of a morning person. I don't function very well in the morning. So 2 days a week, I start with a PT session. Always Friday after PT, I go and have breakfast with a friend. Then there was something on at my kids' school that I went to. And I love that flexibility of, I don't need to ask anyone for that. I don't miss a single thing for my kids. I do school pickups sort of 6 or 7 days a fortnight. I don't have to look at my phone during that time. Like, I've got the parenting work-life balance. There's just not much outside of that. That's the other thing I have to work on. But I love the flexibility. And also prior to COVID, I could work remotely anyway. So I would travel 3 or 4 months of the year. And now that COVID has hit, we've changed so many of our processes so that if and when the world reopens, if I get the opportunity to go and live overseas or spend even more time traveling, my business won't falter in the way that it would have prior to COVID if I'd tried to do that. So COVID's actually been a massive blessing for us in some of the stuff that we've implemented, the changes that we've made, like some of the things we've streamlined. I can't believe it took a global pandemic for us to actually, do that. And it's been game changing. So yeah. I had never used Zoom before, actually, COVID. I didn't even know how to use it on my phone, on my computer. I had no idea.
What's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Probably just that sort of shift of that I'm going through at the moment, of going from being real strategy focused in previous businesses to then going to a new industry and realizing that I couldn't teach a team how to do it without knowing it myself. So I've become so client focused. It's been quite cool to actually know that I could do that and that I have that in me to be that sort of front face of the business, which I've never been before. I've always worked with other business partners who've done that previously. But ultimately, just making sure that, we all stay really focused on the end goal and that everyone's sort of aligned with it has been really important to us as well.
What's the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I don't know, because it's sort of like it's what I couldn't run my business without like extreme efficiency.
Yeah.
And that's how my brain works. And if I had to pick like any superpower that I have, it's that I can look at something and I can go, here's how we can streamline that. Here's how we can make that more efficient. So that whole Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, like constantly tweaking and making improvements.
Five whys.
Important. Yeah. I mean, but the thing you've got to recognize is whilst I love change and, whoever's at the forefront of the business may love change, most of the team members do not. So every time I come in after a weekend's productive brainstorming and I'm like, we've changed everything. This is how we do things now. I can just see them. They're like, oh my God, she's done it again.
God help your team when you come back from a holiday then.
Exactly. That's when I do my best thinking.
Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Well, we've got offshore staff, which has been a first for me. It's very, very common in the broker industry. Predominantly offshore staff in the broking industry are based in the Philippines, and that's because a lot of the banks offshore there. So if you're lucky, you can pick up someone who's ex-Westpac or, they've got banking experience. And for us here in Tassie, there is no one with credit experience on the ground here because the closest, bank that's going to have credit team is in Hobart. And there's just not a lot of experience on the ground. So for us to be able to get experienced staff members over there has been fantastic. But cultural differences.
Oh, it's huge.
Working with teams
I've got 2 team members in the Philippines, one in Kenya, one's just started in Pakistan, and another one, 3 in the Philippines, another one's just started. And the Philippines, I think 85% of the population is Catholic. Obviously, after World War II, the occupation, the Americans, so the English is very good. They're highly educated. But, one of them will not stop calling me on emails, Sir Troy. And it's, this has been going for 4 years. she won't just call me Troy. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. One of my guys in the Philippines, we just laugh like he's really, really Australianizing himself. So now to every client, it's g'day. And we don't even use g'day. But I mean, they're beautiful. They're the most polite human beings I've ever worked with. But in some respects, I'm the kind of boss who I actually just need you to say to me sometimes, don't be a dick. That's not working. Here's what we need to do. And that level of politeness that is so culturally ingrained in them means that even getting any sort of constructive feedback is probably challenging. Yeah.
But also I've found that often they won't tell you that they're overloaded. They'll just got such a strong work ethic.
All my staff are overloaded.
Yeah, who am I talking to? So anything else on adding people to the team, wins, mistakes, maybe here in Australia?
Yeah, so probably more so the mistakes I used to make within my real estate company before this was that I used to get very, very excited when I would interview someone that sort of felt like me.
Yeah.
And I hired so many PAs to work for me who were me, not realizing that me doesn't want to be a PA and work for someone like me. Me wants to run the show. And so I stopped hiring people like me and, went with that whole philosophy of I want to try and hire people that are better at what they do than me and different personality types to me.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that, that means that they're not always going to work at the same pace as me. They might be way more detail oriented than me, which is actually fantastic. I need lots of detail oriented people around me to, mop up the fact that I'm like a tornado. But yeah, so just not hiring people that feel, I don't know, those people that I hired that felt like me, they felt like home. That felt great. I was like, you're going to do an amazing job. And they did, until they just went off and did their own thing exactly the same way that I would have done.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
What about on adding people to the team? Any wins you can talk to?
Well, I feel like just making sure that you are really, really careful with business partnerships.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I've had
Geez.
good business partnerships. I've had crap business partnerships. I've been a good partner. I've been a bad partner. But it's probably been the most stressful part of my business journey so far. And the business partnerships that have worked well, like I was business partners with a real estate agent who's still operating down in Hobart. She's like a second mum to me. Like when it works, it works. She will be someone who is treasured in my life forever. But when it's bad, especially when you go into business with friends, you just have so many potential pitfalls. So I would be so mindful about who I go into business with in future, who I do anything related to money or business with. I would just almost to the point where I would veer on the side of making a decision not to do something with someone purely based around the friendship. I mean, I've even gotten to the stage lately where I very rarely work for close friends as clients anymore because I so value my friendship relationships. And as I get older, I realize that whatever I can do to prioritize those in my life is probably significantly more important than any money I'll make out of a business deal with them.
Yeah, that's good philosophy. What are some things you recommend in building sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
We're at an interesting part with our business right now. So I think that I went culturally maybe too far with my last team. I went to the stage where it was so comfortable and so fantastic for them that none of them really realized it until they went to work for someone else after we'd sold the business. And then there was a lot of like, oh, I can't believe you used to give us our birthday off. And I can't believe we used to do all these team events and this and that. But also from a staff perspective, once you give staff something, I mean, I spoke to a guy yesterday who's coaching me at the moment, and he used to run a really big business in Melbourne. And I think he said something like their coffee bill in their office was $12,000 a year or something like that. So
I want to work there.
Yeah. Well, once you give someone something, then it becomes expected.
Yep.
And so from a cultural perspective, I want to look after my team. I want to make sure that they feel happy and rewarded, but also it's a business to run. Like we've got to make sure that all of that sort of stuff works in with the bottom line as well. Stuff I could be doing better. Like I'm definitely could be, higher on praise and also time with the team. One of the things that the pandemic has sort of done is it's made me realize how much more efficient I am if I'm away from the team and in front of a computer on Zoom all day long, because nothing gets in my way. I can see 18 clients in a day if you give me my UGG boots and a Zoom computer and no one asking me questions. But then the days that I do go into the office, I get beautiful little messages from the girls saying, we loved having you in here. It's so much better for us if you're in here.
Yep.
So I've got to temper that as well. It's that old adage of if I leave them, completely on their own as well, like they're not going to feel the love, and I will lose really good team members, which I don't want to do. Like we've been very, very lucky. We have only really had staff members within the business for the last 3 to 4 years, and we don't really have any turnover. And when we advertise for new staff members, we just get an influx of people wanting to come and join us because they like the outside image that they can see, and because they know clients give us a lot of gifts. So there's always gin in the office, which is super fun for me.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Terribly. Next question. No, no, really, really quite badly. So the one thing I'm proud of in the last year is that I put into place 2 regular PT sessions a week and I go. And the only way I could figure out to go was by paying for it because
Yep.
I'm frugal. So if I pay for it, I won't miss it. If I leave it up to myself, like it took me this long to hack my own brain because I've had gym memberships before and I've not gone because I get busy with work. But if it's in the morning and if I've already paid for it, I'll go. I won't waste the money. So finally I've figured out how to make my brain work like that. But I mean, I work late 4 nights a week with clients till 9:30. I don't have much of a life outside of work, but I'm okay with that. Like I don't miss a thing with my kids, which is my priority. I'll be at everything associated with them. I don't work school holidays face to face with clients, so I always spend them with my kids. So I've got the kid work life balance sorted out. It's just the life part of it that I'm kind of missing. With travel gone, that was my life.
Yes.
So I haven't figured that out yet. Yeah, but I also have like some really, really big goals that I want to achieve work-wise. So I'm okay with that at the moment.
Good. How much professional development did you invest in yourself?
I'm constantly buying books and mostly constantly reading them. I end up probably buying, 5 to every 3 that I manage to read, but I've got lovely stacks of them all over my house. I'm a voracious reader. I do love podcasts and I have really enjoyed the episodes of this one that you have recorded. Although I just found out you did Trisha Cashmere as well, who's another friend of mine. And so I have to listen to hers as well. But I love podcasts. I love face-to-face training as well. And we do a lot of industry stuff just to keep us on track of what lenders are doing and all of that sort of stuff. But right when the pandemic hit last year, I was meant to be going to South by Southwest over in Texas. So fingers crossed, once the world opens back up, I can get and do a few more in-person sort of training sessions like that as well.
Oh, great. And you've had mentors and coaches. Do you want to speak a little bit about your experience there and the value they've added?
Yeah, so prior to the last couple of years, most of my mentors and coaches have been informal. I used to do a lot of public speaking, and so I met a lot of senior people within the real estate industry that way who were coaches and just kind of took me under their wings, would teach me informally, always be there for questions and queries. When I started hitting real pain points in this business, though, I was looking for more formal mentoring and coaching. And it's so hard. I've got friends who are coaches. I ended up opting for my last 2 coaches have not been friends or people that I knew well, but they were people that I really admired and wanted to learn from. And both of them have given me heaps. And I'm the kind of person who does need to be beaten on the head with a good idea a few times sometimes. I remember my first coach that I had in mortgage broking going, you don't need to do that part. You don't need to do that part. You don't need to do that part. Like one of the parts that he said I don't need to do was calling the client to tell them they're approved, their home loan was approved. And I was like, of course I bloody need to do that. That's the most important part of what I need to do.
Yeah.
Now I never do that call. What happens is I'm in with clients all day. Rather than waiting for me, my team will check the approval and then any one of my admin team will pick up the phone and say, Kirsty's in with clients, but she didn't want this to wait. I just want to let you know your home loan's been approved. And so now rather than me stealing all that glory and getting that beautiful happy moment where the client is over the moon or cries or something like that, each one of my team members get to experience that. So from a cultural perspective, that helps them understand why we do what we do. Then it's just not a name on a piece of paper. And I'll still get that moment later on down the track, but I had to be told that probably 4 or 5 times before I actually relinquished that part of the process. And just logically makes sense. I don't need to make that call. There's tons of stuff I'm still doing that I don't need to do. I just need to keep letting go of more and more of it.
And do you have a board of directors or advisors?
No, we don't. I have people that I will go to and ask questions of, some of them, those mentors. I remember in my early 20s, I didn't have a lot of female friends, and because I'm like a super nerdy goal writer, I wrote down on my list of goals that I wanted to make female friends. And because the universe is awesome, when you write stuff down, it happens. I was very fortunate enough to go to see Tony Robbins speak many, many years ago with a couple of girlfriends. And we've been fast friends ever since. And every single one of them has been a business owner. I'm the baby of the group, which I always think is helpful because a lot of the time, if I'm networking with other friends, I'll have more business experience than them. But a lot of these ladies have, many, many more years business experience than me. So I'll ask them, or I'm also part of a mastermind group with Tina Tower, who you've also interviewed.
Yeah,
so,
great.
So they're great as well, very experienced businesswomen who I can just go and ask lots of questions of. And ask them in a really safe space so that I don't feel stupid when I have, stupid questions like we all have.
Yeah, my God, Tina Tower, episode 40. I felt ashamed, so lazy after speaking with her. Like it's one of my top 3 episodes. She's so driven. Yeah.
She is ridiculously driven. So you wouldn't know how we met, but it's actually a really fun story and very indicative of her personality. So when I was 22, I won Telstra Australian Young Businesswoman of the Year.
Yeah, I was going to raise that. You were the youngest person to have ever received the honor. Is that right?
Indeed, still am. And what happened was maybe 2 or 3 years later, I get this email or a call or something, and it's this pocket-sized rocket, Tina Tower, and she's like, I just need to meet you. Can you tell me somewhere where you're going to be? And I will be there. And I said, I'm speaking in Sydney, in 2 weeks' time. She was there. She shadowed me for a day. We had like a lovely sort of, interaction. And she said to me, with no shadow of a doubt, you won Telstra Young Businesswoman of the Year. I'm going to win that. And then she did, because that's the person that she is. So, she's like one of my absolute heroes. Nobody does things like her, just a gap year around the world with her whole family and, parlaying into different businesses. She's a weapon.
Oh, yeah. She is. I loved her story. I think it was early 20s, quit as a primary school teacher, started an after-school primary school tutoring business with a store selling books and kids' toys, got that to 3 stores, and early on also had 2 kids. By year 7, thought, fuck it, this is not challenging enough, so I'll start franchising. This is when she had 3 of her own stores. So year 13, 6 years later, she's got 35 franchisees and obviously sold out. She had adrenal failure, she says on the cast. She's just absolutely worn out. Had a bit of a rest, not for too long, knowing Tina, and then she started 6 other businesses.
Yeah. You show me a successful woman that doesn't have adrenal failure, though. I reckon that is the most common undiagnosed. Like, it's like rushing woman syndrome. Every woman I know has all the symptoms of adrenal failure. I've had it. It's super fun,
I think you've just created a new bumper sticker for cars. So you're one of the few I've had on that's exited a business before. So maybe tell our audience a bit about that experience, maybe what you do differently, because you sold out of the real estate business.
Sold out of 2 real estate businesses. So sold out as a 50% shareholder in one, and was bought out by my previous business partner and a couple of other staff members at that time. That was my first baby, that real estate agency. We made the BRW Fast 100 list. I had all my initial, validation from a business perspective from that business. I loved that team. I still own the building that we operated in. And I was like a serial pest for 6 months after I sold it. I'd still come to work. I couldn't let go. I was grieving it. So I wish with that one, someone had explained to me that selling a business that has had that much of a magnitude of like impact on your life is like, you will need time to grieve it.
And the new owners will probably need to get a restraining order.
Yeah, exactly. Stop stalking them. And then, then I sold my next real estate agency back to the same person there. So, Tony's been great. He loves to buy one of my businesses, which has been fantastic. Yeah. But even then, I was even probably more attached to the second business because it was a smaller team. I'd started that one as the leading person rather than the supporting person. So it felt much more of an integral part of me. And so I've grieved those 2 business sales massively, but also I've been crap at taking any time off in between them. I've never done it. I've just gone, what's next? And now if I thought back to when I sold my first real estate agency, I'm like, why didn't I just go and live overseas for a year? Why didn't I travel? Why didn't I? I didn't have kids or commitments. I was cashed up. So looking back, I would probably just do the exit a little bit differently in that respect. But I've been very fortunate to exit those businesses well. I've exited other businesses, with break even and, other little things that I've tried, but those 2 have been sort of my big successes. But then probably as well, I had a bit of a bad experience with some of the profits from one of those businesses. I did end up trusting a friend and investing in a friend and lost pretty much most of the profits from one of those businesses completely. So maybe just being a bit mindful to take my own advice rather than just giving it out to people financially. I should have been more careful with what I did then, because that was 6 years of my life that ended up being wasted in one silly decision there. But most entrepreneurs that I talk to have a story like that up their sleeve and a learning experience. So
Yeah, that's the positive way to look at it. All right, Kirsty, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Just scaling and doing it in a way that's sustainable and isn't going to drive you insane. And I mean, if you're one of those people that wants to get to a certain stage and then be done, then great. But I've never taken a business to maturity. I've never taken a business to any sort of stability. It's always been growth right through until the quarter that I've sold it. So that would probably be the most difficult thing, is just figuring out how to level up each time. And everyone knows that adage that, you know, the bigger the business and the, you know, the more success you have, the more problems you have as well. So just learning to deal with them and manage that as you go, basically, without losing your sanity.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
I definitely mentioned the E-Myth beforehand, which I think is genius.
Yep, it's my favorite.
I'm a pretty passionate property investor. So reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was in my teens was an absolute game changer for me. But
and your second book, Cash Flow Quadrant's quite good as well, I thought.
It is, yeah, definitely. And Cash Flow Quadrant's probably more relatable to Australia as well. The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like the investment, like property side of things, you can't do that the same way here, but Cash Flow Quadrant, absolutely. There's a game that goes along with it as well. If you haven't played that, the game's fantastic. And it's suitable for kids as well.
I was going to say, I'll get my daughter onto it. She loves Monopoly and chess, so that's next on the list.
Just like Monopoly, but you have to get out of the rat race, and you can, you know, waste all your money on boats and stuff like that, or you can buy businesses. It's quite well done.
Right.
And then, I mean, like, it's not actually a specific business book, but it's always right up there when I think of my favorite books is The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, the online test is excellent. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that you can just take the online test and you're like, bang. And then actually, surprisingly, my love languages changed after I had kids. So that was fun to deal with. But just knowing what makes people tick and just understanding. And there's so many of my team that are words of affirmation. And that's not at all a love language that's important to me. So just making sure that you recognize that people don't always need acknowledgement in the same way that you would want to receive it.
Absolutely. And from a professional or work context, that's a great point. Really important to understand that language of love or communication, in effect. How does someone feel being, help me out here, Kirsty, what's the word I'm looking for?
They're not getting that acknowledgement if you're just communicating in the way that you think that they want to hear it.
Exactly, because you think, well, this is how I want to feel acknowledged, whether it's through words, you know, maybe your language of love, or it might be getting gifts. But, you know, people are different. There's obviously the author has come up with 5 different languages. So understanding that everyone's different and knowing which of those languages works for that team member, and then adjusting your behavior accordingly. Communication is really powerful.
Absolutely. And even just there's a parenting one as well, which is really cool. So recognizing it with your kids. I mean, I've got one kid that touch is their primary love language, but only if you're one of her people. And there's like 4 people that she'll do that with. And the other one is a gifts person, but she doesn't need extravagant gifts. If I say $2 scrunchie and bring it home to her, it's like I've brightened her entire life up. The same way if I picked a flower from the garden and gave it to her.
Yep.
So,
it's great. Any great
people tick.
Yeah. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Oh, well, we've already mentioned Tina Tower, and her podcast is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one that's property focused called The Property Couch, which I really, really enjoy. And I'm a sucker for Tim Ferriss. Basically, anything that man does, I will drool all over and listen to and read with great interest.
He's awesome. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
A really good phone. That's pretty lame, isn't it? But I mean, I could run my entire business from like one laptop and one phone, and, you know, just I wouldn't need anything else really. I mean, that's the beauty of a service-based business. But from a tech sort of perspective, there's a tool that I use, which I'm pretty sure you use as well, called Calendly, to schedule all of my appointments. That is a game changer for me. For $8 US a month, it runs my whole life. And I never have to say to clients, well, we could do Thursday at 1 o'clock or Friday at 2 o'clock. I'm like, here, book yourself in, knock yourselves out, reschedule yourself if you want. I don't care. Like, Calendly has changed my life for the better. I love them.
Okay, here we go. Final and my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one, which you would immediately ignore when you're starting out?
I would tell myself to buy more property younger, definitely. I know how difficult it is to get financing right now as an investor, but when I started investing in the property market, I could have bought so many more properties. I never had issues with it. So I would definitely go back and do that. So it's that whole like time in the market versus timing the market. I'm not a sophisticated investor by any stretch of the imagination, but I've got a really, really good long game. I would tell myself that having children is not as scary as you think it's going to be. And whilst it's hard, it's bloody rewarding and amazing. And I would tell myself that even though you're going to have really hard times coming up, your friends will get you through it, and just to lean on them and ask for help, because that's not something that comes naturally to me. But when I do it, I always really appreciate that support network I've got around me.
Well, thanks for your time today, Kirsty. I think the audience will get a shit ton of value out of listening to your journey, and congratulations on all these successes. And good to hear also you had, some businesses that didn't knock it out of the park, because I think it's quite sobering and good for people to hear that. So I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm in very esteemed company. I can't wait to listen to all the rest of the podcasts.
Thank you. And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.